Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. Thank you so much, Dr. Till, Marcin, and Jan for being with us today and taking the time to be on this panel with me, at least. It's an honor. So maybe before diving right into the questions, maybe we can talk about a little bit about the format and set the stage for the audience. So I have a few questions, at least for our panelists here today. We should have maybe enough time to ask one or two questions from the audience. So if you have anything that comes up, please keep note of it. And if we have enough time, we'll try to get to it. And then for our panelists, I really hope that it's not just an interview where I'm asking one person at a time. It's something that you can feel free to jump in and engage with each other with as well. Okay, so just to set the stage again, our host already made it clear. The question really is regarding how digital technologies can transform the global energy system, making it more connected, reliable, and hopefully sustainable. And to maybe color that with a little bit of background and to set the stage, at least at the EU level, we have a few key actions that are being noted, taking place, and that's really revolving around increasing control over energy use through new digital tools and services. Second would be on controlling energy consumption through labeling schemes, especially in the ICT sector, and then also with strengthening cybersecurity through new legislations and network protocols. So maybe jumping right into what's happening in the EU and what you and everybody quite understands is that at the moment, everyone knows that we really need more intelligent grids. So my question, I think we'll start with Jan, if that's okay with you. Given the current market setup, do you see any challenges for digital technology startups or growth companies who really want to step into the current market structure to develop, innovate, and integrate into the way things are working right now?
Sure. And feel free to stop me because I could talk for hours. So if we want to make it interactive, yeah. So I think, first of all, you said, like everyone understands that we need to digitalize the grid, for example, and this is a given. No? The question is, are people acting upon this understanding? No? And I think we are still a bit behind on the action part. And this is probably the main struggle for startups. No? So the regulation. Startups have great ideas, great execution capabilities. They are ready to help in decarbonizing the grid, but then they have to deal with regulatory processes that were built 50 years ago. So there are these 5 years regulatory periods where the regulator negotiates with the system operators. Okay, what are you going to do? Where are you going to invest? It is manageable. I will pay you now this extra fee on the money that you spend so that you can deploy copper, and that's it. So everyone understands that with digital, you could make this much faster and not linear, but then the regulator has to, in my view, stop this interaction, at least change the interaction with the operators and sort of embrace exponential growth in how these regulatory periods are designed. And I want to bring an example from my portfolio. And again, feel free to stop me whenever you want. We recently invested in a company called Piclo from the UK, who have worked with one of the leading distribution system operators and the regulator in UK to design energy flexibility marketplace, so that instead of going through the standard procurement processes of a utility, the same that you use to buy stationary or like a 3 megawatt battery, you can then procure flexibility all the time in the same way you do like stock trading, no? And this is something that took years, but it can save a lot of time, a lot of money to build these grid reinforcements, and you can get it now with a click because the flexible assets are there and you just have to know how to use them. And this is where digital comes into place. And UK was the front runner, and now more countries, Italy, Ireland, are joining, US, hopefully. So it's coming, but you only have it through these pioneering countries. And the wish is that all the regulators in Europe and in the world embrace digital and not just talk about it.
Thank you. So maybe, do you have any other challenges that you face, Dr. Till, when you see growth companies trying to enter the market?
Yeah, I think Jan framed the problem correctly. So when you look at the most successful startups in the energy space, they often actively try to avoid the regulated parts of the energy market and really focus on those parts where you have direct consumer access, direct business models that don't rely on regulation. And to some extent, let's be frank, grid operators are probably the worst kind of customer you could have as a startup, because they have no sense of urgency, they're highly regulated with slow processes, and so if you really want to scale a business that is dependent on them, that's a tough proposition. But I think the good news are there are many parts of the market that are opening up now, and digital business models definitely help, be it in the trading side of things, be it in the analytics and AI space. I mean, when you look at all these millions of new micro assets that are coming into the market, you couldn't possibly integrate them into the market if you had to do it manually. You need automated digital processes to do so, and there are many good startups that are already working on that.
Yeah, maybe before you get into that, I think that leads us to the second question. But before that, Marcin, what about you? Do you see any specific challenges that startups face, growth companies face, when they need to integrate and innovate with these current systems?
I mean, yes, West panels are born where everybody's aligned. And unfortunately, in this first question, it will be difficult to diverge. What I find particularly challenging is that we indeed do see a lot of technologies that are extremely appealing and potentially, game-changing for the grid operators. And at the same time, it seems that they are not ready to embrace them, and they are actually those worst clients, right? So you have extremely difficult procurement. You have, concentrated client that can prolong and procrastinate for a very long time because lack of sense of urgency. So it all, drives innovators away from the space, which badly needs innovation. And that's something that I think we all observe. And it's not the lack of innovativeness, lack of opportunities that is the problem here. I think the problem lies on the market and demand side. And are there signs of change? I would tend to say that it very much depends on market and on the maturity of a TSO and DSO and its understanding of it needs to transform. Sometimes, especially when the societal change drives processes on the macro level, you see that type of change also being embraced on the level of those regulated companies. But it's a process that I would tend to say we would love to observe, for instance, in this corner of Europe, but we are not yet there.
Thanks. Okay, actually, that's an interesting take from all of you. And before I jump into the second question, maybe I'd like to revisit what you mentioned, Jan and Dr. Till, at least, that right now a lot of these companies are facing walls when they're trying to engage with regulators. So where are the current startups really focusing their energy on instead of trying to take on the way the current market structure works in terms of regulation? So where's the focus right now with startups?
So startups typically don't engage with the regulator unless there are these regulatory sandboxes in say, most innovative countries, and they typically get sort of a space where to test and demonstrate that this could work. So it can be across all the smart grid space that something happens. The question is then when it can scale, because going from regulatory sandbox to widespread deployment has to go through this phase where the regulator will negotiate with the incumbent. And that's the stuff that I don't even want to know what happens in these rooms, So what I want is, as a taxpayer, that these digital solutions are deployed and are sort of forced into the system, rather than being a result of some political negotiation. So it can be everything, The question is how to bypass this this political part.
Yeah, I think to some extent timing is also crucial here, right? I mean, let's look at in Germany. We had news, I think, last week that a company in the space of electric mobility charging, Elva, is gone into insolvency, and the company was very advanced in its vision on where vehicle-to-grid applications could go. We didn't invest, but we followed the propositions closely, and they were involved in various government circles, but they were simply ahead of their time. The market wasn't there yet. I think technology-wise, we all know these things could happen tomorrow if regulation was there. And I think they were banking on this opening up maybe faster than what actually happened. But it's a classic example. I mean, we all know technology-wise, it's a no-brainer to include flexible assets like electric cars into the balancing of the grid, build business models around it. There's a huge potential there where we are not accessing it because we're not there yet. Another example from our portfolio is a company called S4in that is doing, they had an intraday trading of flexibility. They consciously avoided the frequent reserve and secondary balancing markets in Germany, because if you want to pre-qualify for those, good luck, because you need to get through the gate of the grid operators. So they consciously only go into the liquid markets that are already there and directly accessible, because they knew they couldn't build a business if they had to go through the incumbents.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect lead into, I think, the second question that I actually had for us.
May I add one sentence, like
Please.
to close the first question positively? So
Please.
when there is a startup that actually manages to go through this pain and scales, this creates a very strong barrier to entry. So as an investor, we are really seeking those who, despite these difficulties, are doing it anyway. And at the first signals of success, that's the moment where we invest, because, again, things are so hard that if you manage to try and to even succeed, then you are unstoppable.
And if I may add, there are some niches where the DSOs and TSOs are feeling already the sense of urgency. I think cybersecurity for sure is one of those. They understand that they need to defend themselves. They are critical, and yet they are perhaps vulnerable, and they realize that. I think that also, when I think about network resilience in general, two different types of critical crisis situations and accidents, I think they also more or less now understand that they need to step up their game. And last but not least, everything that will lead to increased capacity for accepting renewable energy while refraining from capex heavy investments. I think they will also shortly realize that there are technologies that can do a lot in this respect and open themselves a little bit to this.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And actually that then leads, again, straight to my second question, which is, so we can see that there's so many new digital tools, services available. Just looking at the conference today, there are companies that all have their own unique selling points and ways that they could integrate and really support the entire connected global energy system. So is there a way for corporate or industrial energy users to engage with the energy markets reliably and sustainably without the use of traditional power exchanges or traditional entities? And if so, what are some of these digital technologies and what enables this?
No, I mean, this is clearly a trend both driven by the technology and also by changes in the market. When we look at what happened in energy markets last year with the price spikes that we saw after the war in Ukraine started, it's on the top of the agenda of industrial and corporate energy users now. And effectively what we're seeing is that every corporate and industrial energy user can become their own utility. You don't need that classic sort of division of labor anymore, where a utility supplies and shapes the energy for the customer and the customer is just a passive recipient. We see this very clearly now across European countries now. Companies can first of all do much more themselves in terms of self-generating renewable energy, they can add storage, and then they add some intelligence to that to really optimize what we call behind-the-meter energy usage, so that really the residual load that they still take from the grid can drastically fall and become very different to what historically has been done. And this is all driven effectively by the intelligence and the tools that you now have to steer your own assets on your own sites.
And you see that as these corporate entities being able to not just produce for themselves, but to also be able to supply to the grid if they're in surplus?
Sure, and that's at the end of the day, all we're talking about here is add another API, add an API to the market, and then you can not only optimize against what your parameters are on your own side, but you can optimize against what's happening in the market. And I think there are multiple examples now where you can trade on the usage, the consumption of energy, and responding to price signals there. And of course, storage is becoming more and more common now, and no storage system would be complete without a digital layer that really steers and optimizes the use cases around it.
Yeah, maybe Marcin, do you have an input on how these how industries or large users can engage?
What perhaps is worth adding is that we are very much kind of electricity focused now because of electrification, because everything that is related to decarbonization through electrification. But we should not forget about the other aspects of fuels and feedstock that are being really important for various energy-using sectors, energy-using industries, and that will also probably drive a lot of digital opportunities as well, because handling hydrogen, handling different types of feedstocks, embracing ways in which sector coupling or industrial symbiosis ideas can be applied really will also very much rely on this intelligence that digital and software opportunities can provide. And I think industrial players will realize that it's not only about electricity, where they can count on support of digital tools, but also in a broader context.
And where does that broader context take us apart from electricity? So we're talking about global energy systems, circularity. We're talking about making sure that you have higher efficiency models, labeling schemes. Just as I mentioned earlier, the way the European Union is trying to increase labeling, increasing energy information, so you can understand your own consumptions through smart meters, IoTs. But again, apart from that, cybersecurity as well, where else can we focus on?
Things that you mentioned are great examples. I think various types of power-to-X opportunities, hydrogen-related opportunities, things related to circularity, which you mentioned, that will be enabled by digital tools, will drive the decrease of consumption of energy by means of, for instance, tapping into resources that are untapped, or getting efficiency gains which are not yet available right now without those digital tools being applied. So this is one of the themes that I think we should remember about. And another layer that we maybe not touched upon is everything related to reporting emissions and monitoring and understanding your own consumption, which is also a big part of what drives now the minds of CEOs and corporates, because they need to be able to demonstrate how they decarbonize to their audience, to their stakeholders.
No, exactly. I think this last point is really important. I mean, we've seen it in Germany, for example, with the new sustainability reporting directive. Suddenly 12,000 more companies in the German Mittelstand, often very energy-intensive production, they suddenly have to report on their carbon footprint, on what they do and steps to reduce it. And energy is the obvious starting point there for many of these companies. And so, of course, prices are always a big driver. So prices go up, it becomes top of the agenda. But now sustainability is equally important. I mean, I have socks here with the warming signs on. And this is actually from a corporate cycling challenge where thousands of corporates joined to have an education of their own employees and awareness raising around this topic. And I think with regulation like this is top of the agenda now for many more corporates relative to what you've seen maybe even 5 years ago.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I actually have a lot more questions on reporting, but maybe I'll meet you after this. Jan, how about you?
Well,
do you have
maybe a lot has been said. So I just wanted to add maybe so we have spoken about commercial and industrial customers, but this is happening also on the residential level. So people can become their own utility thanks to the, let's say, cost reduction curve of PV and batteries mainly. This is technology driven. Also, regulation was very important to make these prices go down, and this was a flywheel to make that happen and scale globally. I just want to bring very quickly 2 examples from our portfolio again. So one is a company called San Vigo. We invested a few days ago, where people can buy PV system, a battery, all is digital customer journey, and the technology, pieces of technology that enable this are, let's say, behind the scenes operational excellence tools. Then you would have the smart meter, you would have home energy management system, you would have algorithmic trading, and this is all a set of tools that utilities could use, but for some reason startups are doing it. No, so there is a lot of space for disruption, but what counts in the end is for the end customer that they can really own the green energy they produce. They are sure that this is green, and they can make money on top of it by trading the surplus. So that's the new world, and everyone has to face it.
Fantastic. I'm glad you said the word disruptive technologies, because that's my 3rd question, and I think that gives us just enough time to maybe also squeeze in a question from the audience if someone has one. But yes, we hear about all these disruptive technologies. We hear promises of innovation. We hear machine learning, AI, blockchain. We hear cybersecurity, and really all of these seem to me as their software innovations. So I'm not limiting or I'm not diminishing how important software innovation is, but what is the balance between software innovation and hardware innovation? And is there one of these emerging technologies I'm missing? And then maybe you can also finish off with telling me which one of these excite you the most, looking in 10 years' time, which one really, is something you'll keep an eye on?
Well, so the whole hardware software debate, for me, it's like, do you prefer cats or dogs? No, I like both. I personally own a cat because I have this empathy with cats. I also love dogs. No, so it's the same for software, hardware. No, I love software. I love hardware. Our VC fund invests in software. But obviously, we are very happy if innovative hardware is deployed, because this innovative hardware certainly needs software to scale much faster. No, so I don't see this debate. So everything is needed. The important is to get to net zero. In terms of what technology excites me the most, right now it cannot be anything else than AI, because after the release of ChatGPT, everyone had this wow moment as the first time that I surfed the internet and I could talk to people from I don't know, Indonesia, and before, phone calls were so expensive. As a kid, I was not allowed to use the phone, and suddenly the internet comes, and that's not a barrier anymore. So I see a lot of innovation that we cannot yet imagine thanks to the recent developments of AI, and this is what really excites me for the next 5 years of our fund, where we will invest in startups that will embrace it on a level that might not be visible as ChatGPT, but will increase productivity by 100 times.
Fantastic. Dr. Till?
Yeah, I mean, I agree to some extent. We need both. We need software, we need hardware. I think maybe the more pertinent question is, where is the venture investment case? And so for us at Set Ventures, we definitely have a preference for sort of more digital enablers of the energy transition. And our core hypothesis is really that a lot of the let's say, science and hardware breakthroughs that are required for the energy transition have to some extent already happened. I mean, there will for sure be a lot of incremental innovation and progress and new technologies coming to the market. But for us, from a venture perspective, the really exciting part is really the new business models, the new digital tools that are now being deployed in the energy system, and really creating that sort of digital layer with which we can orchestrate the future energy system. Because that's, I think, where a lot of the value will happen. And for sure, AI will play a role in that. We see it happening already today. There's no hardware that's being deployed that is dumb anymore. It has to be a smart hardware. But I think there's much more coming as well. For example, also in terms of how blockchain can be used in transactions. So we have a portfolio company there called FlexiDAO that it is enabling real-time green energy certification and monitoring, so that we can really go in terms of guarantees of origin from these sort of yearly averages of green production to really exact tracing of consumption and production of green energy on an hourly or even sub-hourly level. And these are things where clearly a lot of technological drive has to happen behind it, and new digital tools being used.
That's fascinating.
Well, if you look at our portfolio at EIT-InnoEnergy, it's probably 90% hardware and tangible technologies, with the remaining 10% going into digital. Which is not to say that we are not investing in good stuff in digital. FlexiDAO is one of our investments as well, but I does have a bit of a different approach to that question, and that is where the next breakthrough is needed to get to the net zero, and what will be the next big thing in hardware that will need digital enablers. And for me, one of those key things that is the elephant in the room that we need to deal with is industrial heat. And I think a lot of effort will be going in the next couple of years, if not decade, to actually decarbonize industrial heat use in a meaningful way. And there will be a lot of digital opportunities to enable this through power to heat, from different type of, as I already mentioned, industrial symbiosis ideas, through demand-side response, through various types of digital applications that are probably already kind of envisaged and maybe used on the electricity side, but they have to be redeployed in a smart way to enable transition in industrial heat, which is something without which is the element that we cannot disregard. This is a critical element on this path to net zero.
Yeah, absolutely. Industrial heat is not something I think many people in here think about a lot, but I can see that that's something that needs to be definitely tackled soon. Okay, so maybe we have a couple more minutes. Do you have, maybe the panelists, do you have any questions for each other, or does anybody from the audience maybe have a question for one of the panelists on digital innovation in companies that are coming into the market? Maybe, yeah?
Hi guys, thanks for the discussion. It's great hearing all the different perspectives on the future. But I'm curious about, well, the past of the energy and how digital technologies have already transformed the energy industry. So if you could give some examples of that, would be good as well.
Yeah, do you have the question?
Well, I think this is really country dependent, because we see a lot of different pathways in different countries. I mean, if I look at one example, I'm based in Germany, and I'm always amazed when I travel to the Scandinavian countries and the widespread adoption of smart meters, and based on that real-time day of time usage tariffs, basically, so that really the customer is fully integrated into the energy system and can play a role in that. And obviously that's enabled by digital technologies and smart meters. And then I look at Germany with a 0.3% market penetration of smart meters, and I could start crying, basically.
Well, when I think how energy is being transformed by digital, obviously, unfortunately, my thoughts go to cybersecurity and everything around, critical infrastructure being affected by potential threats on the cybersecurity level, and how it needs to be defended. Maybe it's not the most kind of forward-looking and exciting type of reflection, but I think it's very valid.
last few seconds?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes into our mind is also smart meters, because that's sort of the most widespread IoT device globally. And if you want to hear like what impact this can have, I can mention one of our portfolio companies called Cuculus, who have a software that manages the data coming from these smart meters. And this enables utilities to control, for example, leakages. So they manage the water infrastructure in the Emirates, and typically, this water comes from desalination plants, very energy intensive. So any 1% of leakage that is saved by having the possibility to monitor it via digital tools results in tons of CO2 saved. So very tangible with a click.
Thank you so much, Jan. I think that's our time, and thank you everyone for being here and all your time on the panel.